Are you sure what you're cooking for your family is really 100% beef? A lot of people still believe that grabbing ground beef from the supermarket automatically means it's safe. But a series of recent government warnings say otherwise. The ground beef you buy every week may carry E. coli bits of metal and has even been suspected of being mixed with horse meat. This is not some story from 2009 or the recession years. Right in the middle of 2025, when beef prices are at their highest in history, Americans are still unknowingly eating meat with murky origins, chemically treated cuts, and in some cases, not even pure beef. So why are products like this still being sold? And which 7 places should you stop buying ground beef from immediately? If you've ever trusted that label that says 100% beef, it's time you watch this video to the end. Number 1. Walmart. A big box of beef, a bargain price, neatly wrapped in America's busiest supermarket. You think you're doing the smart thing by buying in bulk to save money, portioning it out, and freezing it for the month. But sometimes that very box of beef is the reason a whole family ends up in the ER. Earlier this year, FSIS announced that at least 5 serious cases of E. coli in New Jersey were linked to ground beef purchased at Sam's Club. 2 of those patients were hospitalized, suffering from bloody diarrhea and temporary kidney failure. This was not an internet rumor. It was an official USDA statement, complete with product codes, production dates, and a list of retailers. Sam's Club was on that list. The troubling part is that this meat didn't look suspicious at all when you picked it up. The packaging was sealed tight, clearly labeled 85% lean, 15% fat ground beef, even stamped with an all-natural sticker. Yet it carried bacteria that can kill in just a few days if not caught in time. How could a massive chain like Sam's Club, part of Walmart with resources and strict supply systems, let a shipment like this slip through? The answer lies in its centralized distribution model. Sam's Club doesn't process its own beef. It buys in bulk from large suppliers and rebrands the packages. That means if just one plant fails a sanitation check, thousands of boxes are shipped across the country, and you, the customer, have no idea where your meat really came from. On top of that, most Sam's Club shoppers go for the 5 or 10 pound packs of ground beef because the per pound price is cheaper. But have you noticed how the bigger the pack, the more tightly the beef is compressed, making it harder to judge freshness or detect an off smell before cooking? That's the hidden danger. The outer layer may still look bright red while the center could already be breaking down if the cold chain was disrupted during transport or storage, which is common in overcrowded, understaffed supermarkets. There's another detail many people miss. A lot of ground beef at Sam's Club doesn't carry a clear USDA inspected mark. Instead, the label vaguely says processed and packed for Sam's Club. When something goes wrong, tracing the source is nearly impossible, especially if you've stocked up and kept the meat in your freezer for months. You might be thinking, I always cook it thoroughly, so what's the risk? But E. coli can spread through the air, stick to your hands, contaminate knives and cutting boards, and transfer to other foods in as little as 5 careless minutes. And when it's an elderly family member or a child who gets sick, that cheap deal you were so proud of suddenly becomes a heavy burden. The problem is not that Sam's Club deliberately sells tainted meat. The problem is the sheer size and complexity of the system. A small failure can spiral out of control. And in a world where every cut of beef is packaged like an industrial product, consumer complacency becomes the weakest link. If you've ever bought ground beef in bulk from Sam's Club, now is the time to check your freezer. Look closely at the pack date, the brand, the product code. Not to scare you, but because every time you put blind trust in scale, you could be trading away your family's safety. Number 2, Whole Foods Market. Whole Foods used to be the gold standard for clean living, premium quality, and trust. People walked in believing they were buying something truly organic, something worth paying a little extra for in the name of health. But on June 3, 2025, the USDA issued a warning: ground beef labeled Organic Rancher 85% lean and 15% fat sold nationwide at Whole Foods may be contaminated with E. coli O 157H7. This was no minor warning. E. coli is not just about a stomachache or a mild fever. It is a bacteria that can cause kidney failure, organ damage, and even death, especially dangerous for older adults who often believe that buying from Whole Foods protects their health and retirement. The contaminated beef carried an expiration date of May 18, 2025, product code 9004472, packaged in clear plastic trays. FSIS classified it as a public health alert because by the time it was discovered, the meat had already been sold and eaten by countless families. The problem is that not everyone knows how to check product codes, and most people are not monitoring government alerts closely enough to react in time. If you thought the word organic was a shield of protection, this was the wake-up call. A product stamped with organic rancher ground beef, wrapped in a picture-perfect countryside design, sold under one of the strictest retail systems in the industry, could still make you sick. This is no longer about quality. This is about trust. Now imagine you are an older adult cutting back on dining out, choosing organic food, paying twice the price compared to Walmart for a tray of meat you thought was heart healthy. And then you find out that tray might carry E. coli. What would you believe in after that? It didn't stop there. Consumers also found that Whole Foods did not handle the recall the traditional way. Instead of asking customers to return the product or offering support, they simply issued a warning, which meant if you had already eaten it, your only option was to watch for symptoms. That raises a bigger question. If even Whole Foods can sell a product that may cause food poisoning, what does that say about the rest of the industry? This is not just a story about a single tray of beef. It is a snapshot of the entire modern food retail system where every piece of meat looks clean and polished, but may secretly harbor deadly bacteria. And you will not be warned until after you bring it home. There was a time when Whole Foods was seen as the apple of the food world. Now that reputation has become a burden. The higher the expectation, the deeper the disappointment. And let's be clear, this is not the first time Whole Foods has been called out. In past years, they were criticized for misweighing products, mislabeling prices, and now staying silent in the face of bacterial contamination. You might be asking, so who can I trust now? There's no easy answer, but one thing is certain. If you still think organic automatically means safe, it is time to think again. Check your fridge right now. If you see ground beef from Whole Foods, especially the Organic Rancher 85/15ths variety, stop. Not because we are trying to scare you, but because the modern food system is no longer working in your favor. Number 3, Aldi. Some people would never step foot in Whole Foods because it is too expensive. But millions of Americans shop at Aldi believing that cheap can still mean clean. And that is the most dangerous trap of all. Aldi has built its reputation on selling ground beef at some of the lowest prices in the market, averaging around $3.49 per pound, often 20 to 30% cheaper than other chains. But have you ever stopped to wonder how they pull that off? This is not a new story. Back in 2013, Aldi was caught in a scandal that shook all of Europe. Their frozen beef lasagna and burgers were found to contain horse meat. Not 2% or 5%. Some samples tested as 100% horse meat, even though the label clearly said 100% beef. The scandal triggered an international investigation, dragged in multiple suppliers and contractors, and ended with nationwide recalls in the UK, Ireland, and Germany. You might think that was a European problem and has nothing to do with the United States. Maybe, but pause for a moment. Same brand, same chain model, same obsession with cutting costs. What exactly would stop that scenario from happening here? In 2023, FSIS once again flagged Aldi, this time for ground beef suspected of containing plastic fragments. Some of the frozen beef patties trace back to plants in Illinois. No deaths were reported, but customers did find sharp plastic shards buried in the meat after cooking. That is the point when many people began asking themselves, if I can buy a pound of beef for the price of half a cup of Starbucks coffee, what is that beef really made of? The answer does not need to be spelled out. Trust begins to crack the moment price gaps become too big to explain. Another blind spot is labeling. Many Aldi ground beef products do not specify what cuts are used, shoulder round, or just a mystery mix. Some of their private labels, like Simply Nature Berman's or Cattleman's Ranch, sound local, but in reality they come from large-scale industrial plants. And it is not unusual for that ground beef in your freezer to be restructured from leftover scraps, run through machines, and pressed back into something that looks like ground meat. Add to that the rock-bottom pricing. Aldi often bypasses local slaughterhouses and instead buys from bulk distributors overseas or from third-party sources where traceability is almost non-existent. Budget-conscious shoppers, especially senior SNAP recipients or families living on fixed incomes, often choose Aldi because they see it as the smart way to stretch a dollar. But sometimes that choice, which feels like saving, comes with a hidden cost that no one notices right away. If you have ever bought ground beef from Aldi believing it was simply beef now, is the time to take a closer look at the label. Every line, every note. You might find the small print that says, may contain up to 15% fat trimmings. What does that mean? It means leftover scraps, often not considered prime cuts, ground up and mixed back in. And in the end, the question you should be asking is this: how much trust are you willing to sacrifice just to save a couple of dollars? Because with ground beef, the cheapest price can sometimes turn out to be the most expensive one. Number 4, Sam's Club. The more you buy, the cheaper it gets. That is the classic bulk shopping philosophy in America. But when it comes to ground beef, that philosophy has become a dangerous trap for millions of families. Sam's Club has long been famous as the place to stock up, saving enough for the whole month. You walk out with 10 pounds of ground beef believing you are making the smart financial choice. What many people do not realize is that the sheer volume, the fast-paced packaging, and the low price create the perfect conditions for systematic mistakes. In June 2024, a joint report from FSIS and the CDC confirmed at least 3 serious cases of food poisoning in Ohio and Pennsylvania tied to ground beef purchased at Sam's Club. 2 of the victims were older adults with pre-existing conditions, both of whom had bought the popular 6-pound combo pack. The outbreak was traced to cross-contamination during batch processing at a secondary packaging plant in Indiana that supplies dozens of Sam's Club locations across the Midwest. And this was not the first time. Over the past 5 years, Sam's Club has been named in at least 4 federal food safety alerts, 2 of which were directly related to ground beef. What makes it more concerning is that Sam's Club often uses third-party suppliers, repackaging the meat under in-house brands like Member's Mark or All Natural Ground Beef. The labels say 100% beef, but there is no requirement to disclose which cuts were used or the actual lean-to-fat ratio after processing. Tests from 2023 revealed unusually high collagen levels in some products, a sign that leftover scraps, connective tissue, or ground fat were being mixed in. For older adults or those with heart disease, diabetes, or high blood pressure, these hidden fat levels in bulk-packed ground beef can pose a serious health risk. Yet nothing on the packaging warns you of that. All you see is lean 80/20. It's a number that means very little if the so-called lean portion is ground sinew or recycled cuts. Then there is the issue of display. Sam's Club stacks dozens of trays inside giant industrial coolers. But when demand spikes, customers have reported stores pulling meat from freezers, thawing it, and restocking it as if it were fresh without disclosing that it had already been frozen. If you are the kind of shopper who likes to portion meat and store it for 2 weeks at a time, take a closer look at your fridge. Have you ever noticed the center of the pack turning darker or smelling stronger than the outer layer? That is a clear sign of uneven storage, something that happens often when meat is densely packed in industrial packaging. Sam's Club is not deliberately selling faulty products. The problem is scale. The system moves so fast that small gaps get overlooked and consumers are the ones who pay the price. You think you are saving money. But if a 10-pound pack of beef leads to an ER visit or food poisoning in your household, was that savings really worth it? If you are a Sam's Club member who regularly buys ground beef, pause for a moment. Read the fine print, check the plant codes, and if possible, consider reducing your bulk purchases in favor of smaller amounts from a butcher or a local supplier with clearer sourcing. No one can stop you from choosing Sam's Club, but you have every right to demand more from the food you bring home. Number 5. Food Lion. More than 100 stores across the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic. For many families living in rural areas, Food Lion is not just a choice, it is the only option they have. And that is exactly why the quality of food here deserves some serious questioning. A USDA report in March 2024 revealed that a large batch of ground beef sold under the butcher's brand label at Food Lion was tied to a recall of 13,000 pounds of meat suspected of being contaminated with salmonella. The product was processed at a plant in North Carolina and shipped to hundreds of stores before the warning was issued. Unlike E. coli, which can lead to kidney failure, salmonella typically causes vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, and poses a direct threat to seniors' children and those with weakened immune systems. But here is the troubling part. No warning signs were ever posted at the meat counter after the recall came to light. If you did not follow the news every day, there is a good chance you ate it and no one would ever tell you. Food Lion does not carry the brand power of Walmart or Costco. It caters to loyal shoppers who stick to their habits and shop close to home. And because of that down-to-earth image, people often let their guard down when it comes to plain packaging, unfamiliar brands, or barcodes that look hastily printed. Their ground beef is often sold in roll packs, long plastic-wrapped tubes stacked in open refrigerators. From a distance, it is almost impossible to tell the difference between 73, 27ths, 80/20ths, or 90/10ths unless you look closely at the tiny print along the edge. One of the biggest issues here is the lack of transparency about sourcing. Ask the butcher, where did this meat come from? And the most common answer you will get is, I'm not sure, just from the supplier. That supplier often does not have an official website, no published handling procedures, and sometimes not even a USDA registration number on the packaging. And do not forget, back in 2022, Food Lion was accused of selling near-expired meat repackaged as fresh. An internal report from a former employee in Virginia claimed that ground beef trays were collected, mixed together, pressed, and then stamped with a new sell-by date, extending shelf life by another 2 or 3 days. Food Lion has never publicly confirmed that, but if you have ever opened a tray of beef from there and noticed an odd smell or meat that looked uneven in color between the outside and the inside, you may have already discovered the truth with your own nose. Most of Food Lion's loyal shoppers live in areas with very few alternatives. They shop there because it is close, familiar, and cheaper than driving to bigger supermarkets farther away. But that convenience-driven habit is making people overlook their right to demand transparency from where the meat was raised to how it was packaged. If you have bought ground beef at Food Lion, especially roll packs or value packs, you should take a closer look in your freezer. Read the label carefully, check the dates, and look for a USDA code if there is one. If the information is missing, you should start asking questions. Because in an era where food is handled like fast fashion, the only one who can truly protect you is not the supermarket chain, it is you. Number 6, Costco. Not everyone is willing to pay almost $60 a year just to walk into a store, but many still do because they believe Costco means quality and honesty, especially when it comes to meat. The Kirkland label once stood for trust, strict oversight, and something that felt worth paying extra for. But at some point, even Costco could not escape the same issues that plagued the rest of the ground beef industry. In September 2023, an internal USDA inspection report revealed that during a random check at a Costco meat processing facility in California, inspectors found inconsistent handling between batches, including discrepancies in the fat to lean ratios compared to what was listed on the packaging. Specifically, a product labeled 85% lean tested lower only about 78 to 80%. To an average shopper, a 5 to 7% gap might not seem like a big deal. But for someone with underlying conditions like heart disease, high blood pressure, or diabetes, that gap can be dangerous enough to throw off a carefully managed diet. What makes it worse is that no recall ever followed. Costco stayed quiet, handled it internally, and moved on. No email alerts, no notices posted at the meat counters. The story never made major headlines. But if you look closely at the FSIS website or keep up with federal food inspection bulletins, you will see that Costco is no longer an exception. Some loyal customers have even reported that Kirkland beef smells off spoils faster and releases more liquid when cooked, especially with the 10-pound frozen packs. These complaints show up regularly on Reddit and Costco forums, especially during the hotter months. The reason part of it comes from Costco's supply chain expansion across more states, which makes quality control harder to maintain. Instead of relying on a single main processing facility, Costco partnered with third parties to meet the post-pandemic surge in demand. That means the Kirkland beef you buy today may come from a completely different plant than the one you bought last month, even though the label looks identical. Consistency is slipping away, and trust, once shaken, is not easy to repair. Another hidden corner of the story is Costco's effort to lower prices and stay competitive. They launched the ground beef 10 pounds value pack split into 5 smaller portions, which sounds convenient. But much of that beef is not ground fresh in store. It is pre-processed from frozen shipments sourced from bulk lots in the Midwest. This is not a secret, but it is also not something anyone points out clearly. Customers who place their faith in the Kirkland name keep buying without second-guessing. You might have thought Costco would never do that to me, but in a world where beef prices have climbed 35% in just 18 months, every business model is forced to adjust. The question is, can you adjust your expectations fast enough? If you have been stocking up on Kirkland ground beef thinking it was safe, now is the time to look again. Not just at the pack date, but at the lean to fat ratio. Watch closely as it thaws, cook a small portion first. If you see it release too much water, the fat bubbling too fast, or notice a strange smell, you might be holding a batch that is not what you thought it was. No one denies that Costco was once an icon, but what something once was does not mean it always will be. And in the world of industrial food, sometimes the Kirkland name is just that, a name. So here we are with 6 familiar names that used to be the default choice, for millions of Americans, now forcing us to ask a simple question: do we really know what we are eating anymore? This is not about one bad brand. It is about a system slowly turning once reliable staples into something unpredictable. Ground beef used to be a basic grocery item. Now it is something you have to check, scan, and read every tiny line on the label. If there is one lesson you should take away from this video, it is this: shop as carefully as if you were buying medicine for your own family. Because sometimes what you thought was just a budget meal might be the thing you end up paying for with your health.
This video does not promote division within the United States or encourage segregation. All content is presented for the purpose of exploration, analysis, and fostering discussion based on current events, public sentiment, and social trends. We fully respect the United States Constitution and all federal regulations. If today analysis made you think, drop a comment so we can keep the conversations going. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you will never miss our next independent deep dive.